Metroid Prime 4 draws closer every day. As fans count down those days, it's hard not to keep adding items to the wish list for this game. In fact, I have a few videos on my channel on that very topic, from which species should appear to what the gameplay might look like. However, there's one smaller, perhaps underappreciated aspect of the original Prime trilogy I really hope they preserve for Prime 4, which is the incredible main menu sequences. This might sound like a trivial topic, but if we dig a bit deeper, I think it's quite the opposite and something we need to revisit. So first, let's look back at the menus of the first three Prime games to understand why they were so important, even if many people don't realize it, and why it's critical that Prime 4 continues this tradition. As always, please consider subscribing to support the growing channel for more retro and current gaming analysis, and let's dive in. Now, they say first impressions are lasting impressions, and that's certainly true when applied to the Prime games. Way back in 2002, I remember as a kid feeling mesmerized by the intro animation and main menu of the original Metroid Prime. I had never seen anything quite like it on a Nintendo console, and this was the first Metroid game I ever played. The level of detail, the quality of the animation, and the alien audio were unlike anything I'd seen in a game menu before, much less on the cheerful purple lunchbox. At the time of its 2002 launch, the original Metroid Prime was the first Metroid game in over 8 years. Between the bold transition to a first-person perspective and 3D world on a new generation of hardware, Retro knew they had to make a strong first impression, and they certainly delivered. The creativity of designing the menu to look like the inside of a Metroid's head is memorable and sets the stage in so many ways. The visuals successfully delivered the alien yet familiar, the epic yet subtle, the beautiful yet eerie, a high-quality standard that the entire game would go on to deliver until the end credits. It was all captured and realized in the first minute of the experience, an experience that simply demanded a sequel. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes arrived a short 2 years later, a shocking timeline by today's glacial development lifecycle standards. Once again, Retro delivered a beautiful intro that effectively captures the entire essence of the game in a single sequence. Battling light and dark imagery and creatures, forlorn choirs and deep bass heartbeats, a grand aesthetic with foreboding weight. The menu slowly builds to a more powerful main theme, much like the game itself, long periods of subtle battles leading up to big moments. The music of this menu is so great they even reused it for the Metroid Prime pinball menu, sort of a strange design decision when you consider pinball is essentially a remake of Prime 1 in pinball form, with no Prime 2 content at all, but I digress. The Prime 2 intro animation seamlessly transitions into a high-tech menu with a neat-looking molecule theme. In some ways, this menu design alludes to the Sanctuary Fortress and the technology of the Luminoth, as well as the in-game menu systems. It captures the bold style of Echoes, and there's even a clever dynamic here. Whereas the intro animation is overall a very dark palette, the main menu itself is a very light palette. This whole sequence once again embodies the adventure ahead. To this day, Metroid Prime 2 contains my favorite main menu sequence in a video game. In the first minute, Echoes reassured me this experience would deliver the quality and atmosphere of its predecessor, but also seek to surpass it through a dramatic, divisive vision. With 2 successful titles behind them, gamers waited for Retro Studios to confirm a trilogy. Metroid Prime 3 arrived 3 years later in 2007, complete with another epic menu. Like the experience ahead, this menu goes all in on the cinematic or epic vibes, with an intense building choir overlaying the corruption imagery. Whereas Echoes drew power from subtlety, Prime 3 intended to end the series with a bang. I love the blue corruption imagery spilling into the menu that mirrors what is to come in the game. The parasites in the background as you navigate the menu are also an interesting touch. However, in my opinion, this menu is a very slight step down from the other two, arguably much like the game itself, even if it is still epic and a worthy conclusion for the trilogy. My primary complaint here is that I don't think the high-pitched MIDI choir sounds are quite as high quality as they should be for such an epic conclusion. but the theme itself is still powerful and moving. The final title logo and interactive menu also aren't quite as elegant as the two prior games, but it gets the job done. There's also a little bit of a rushed feeling here compared to the first two that persists through elements of the experience. Now, all three of these main menus are so great that it was a minor tragedy when they were removed from the Trilogy release. I wish the Trilogy menu launched you into each of these original three menus when you selected a game, though I understand there was probably a desire for a more unified experience, and the one they added isn't too bad. It's at least fully interactive and includes new animations and custom audio, which is nice when you consider many lazy collections just slap a few images on the screen and force you to pick one to start the game. Anyways, I hope Prime 4 just absolutely delivers on the main menu. I think it's actually more important than it was for any of the other three games. There hasn't been a mainline Prime game in 18 years by the time Prime 4 comes out. It's most likely launching cross-gen in the first year of a new console generation. First impressions matter more than ever. I'm hoping this menu immediately recaptures the feeling that something epic, polished, and special awaits the player. I think the Beyond subtitle also holds all kinds of potential here. I could see Retro building some type of menu animation or intro that looks like a black hole or a wormhole portal or something like that, where the text and menu sort of emerge out of the great Beyond. This could be very cool. It looks like Beyond is also using a purple color scheme of some sort, which would also be new and potentially an interesting palette for the main menu. Prime 2 and 3 have pretty limited color palettes in their menus, so it would be interesting to see something colorful and vibrant. An intro menu that really captures the quality and impact from the first three games would also go a long way to providing connective tissue for Prime 4. I'm hoping this game feels like a natural evolution of the original three, obviously with some new ideas of its own, and a similar first impression would be very welcome. For longtime fans, it would be such a great feeling to just boot up the fourth menu and feel like the franchise never left, instantly erasing an almost 2-decade absence. One of the reasons I think a beautiful intro menu is critical is to prove that the ancient Switch hardware can still deliver a modern, polished visual experience. The Switch really started to show its age in 2024, in my opinion, even for someone like me who is pretty forgiving towards occasional frame rate stutters or modest resolutions. An epic menu could go a long way to immediately eliminate fears that the game is overly limited by the technology. I was so glad to see Retro go through the trouble of rebuilding the original Prime menu for Prime Remastered. I hope they're able to commit that level of time and effort to Prime 4. I think this issue was sort of an Achilles heel for Samus Returns, which launched exclusively on the 3DS in 2017 well after the Switch had launched in March, causing it to feel a little bit dated on day one, even if it's still an enjoyable game. Now you might be thinking, well obviously this game is going to have an epic menu, it's Metroid, but that's not necessarily the case. Although Retro has always delivered on this front, some of the other Metroid games since Prime 3 actually have kind of generic menus in my opinion. For example, although I really enjoyed Metroid Dread, I think the main menu is pretty underwhelming and it doesn't really capture the quality and intensity of the experience ahead. I even remember being underwhelmed the first time I booted up that game. Those fears were erased soon after I started to play, but it was all a bit odd to me. Other M also didn't really have an impressive main menu. I do think it's sort of cool how the first time you play, the game immediately starts with a cinematic and goes right into the game, until you realize the cinematics are not going to be great in terms of script and acting. The menus of Samus Returns and Federation Force on the 3DS were alright, but nothing special. The point is that we arguably haven't had an epic Metroid menu since Prime 3 in 2007, so I'm hoping there's a return to form with Prime 4. So what do you think? Will Prime 4 deliver on this front? Is the main menu really this important? Which menu was your favorite in the series? Leave a comment, please subscribe, and let's discuss.